So Dawn Staley was apparently sick of hearing about Caitlin Clark, and now the same goes for Paige Bueckers. Staley made some interesting comments before the national championship game about the media coverage and how it's been centered on Bueckers, which is the same thing her Gamecocks team heard about last year with Clark and Iowa and their respective legacies. Now, she did make it a point to say that Paige deserves the coverage, but that she thinks it should be more equal. Now, the problem with that is Staley is the star for South Carolina, the most recognizable face and name. And that's been that way because of how she's built the program and because of the depth of South Carolina right now, not being a team based around a star like maybe has been at least a little bit more the case in the past. So Gino Auriemma versus Dawn Staley is certainly a media storyline. The other one is Paige Bueckers. And that's just the way the business works and the way it's going to be. And I think for Dawn Staley to get the coverage that she wants, well, the simple way to do that is to beat UConn in the national championship game. But here's what Staley had to say about that in regards to the coverage and the comments that I just made. It's almost as if she feels South Carolina is slighted.
And she'll be the number one pick in the WNBA draft, and she'll be an Olympian. She'll be all of those things, right? But when you put a narrative out there, everybody sees that, and it puts us at a disadvantage, whether you want to believe so or not. Officials see it. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Sports Center. It's all over all of that. And she's a great player, but just because you're a great player doesn't mean you need to win a national championship to legitimize it. Paige is legit. She was legit from the moment she stepped, on this stage or prior to in Minnesota. Her career is legendary. She will leave a legacy at UConn, whether she wins one or not. So I just want to put that out there. Like I can't not address it because it's happening. Like it happened to us last year. Everything was about Caitlin Clark and her legacy and her ability to win a national championship. Yet we were coming in this thing undefeated, doing something that's unprecedented at the time. Because it's hard. I mean, it's hard. And then we find ourselves back here in a similar situation. So, I want some, I want some, I want the sentiments to be about our players and what our players been able to do equally, because there's room to do both. Okay, we can raise Paige up because she deserves that. We can raise our players up because they deserve that, and that's not talked about enough. There's room for our game, like it's for some for Jose. It's room for our game for all of us to be covered. Let's not let's not choose one's history over another program's history. Let's not choose one player over another player's history because we're all creating history for our game.
So which player is she talking about? What does she want covered? I guess that would be, she could have cited an example that would have helped it hammer the point home a little bit more, at least for me. Look at what Chloe Kitts has done, becoming a superstar. Mylasia for Wiley is the player that's got the most attention on South Carolina, and a lot of that attention has been around the usage or lack thereof. And that's the coach's prerogative. And I'm not saying Dawn Staley's doing the right or wrong thing. I mean, she's in the national championship game for a reason, but Staley has become the face of the South Carolina program. So I'm not exactly sure what her gripe is. Do I think it gives UConn an advantage in the national championship? No, I don't. I think UConn has an advantage on paper because they have better players. And one of them is Paige Bueckers. That's why she gets talked about. Another one, obviously, is Sarah Strong, who I've talked about quite a bit, and I think is the biggest difference maker. And when you go into the national championship game, but aside from Bueckers, this is storytelling business too. Not to say there isn't room for breakdowns and there isn't room for profiles of other players, but it's going to be that way. You have story number one, Paige Bueckers chasing a national championship. She came back to UConn. This is her last chance. We know she's going into the WNBA draft. We know this is her final opportunity to culminate the college career with a title. And that's what that's about. Then on the other side of it, you've got what Gino Auriemma has built at UConn versus what Dawn Staley has built at South Carolina. Dawn Staley, her program has a case as the prominent program, the most successful one at the moment. I mean, if they win, they certainly are. If Dawn Staley and company win, who could say anybody but South Carolina is the premier program in college basketball right now? That would be 2 out of 3 years, 4 since 2017. The last time that UConn won the national championship was 2016, which qualifies for a huge drought in Husky lore, I would say. But Gino Auriemma has a chance to reset that standard as well. He's got 11 national championships, and now he's back. And in fact, I think there's more pressure on UConn and Auriemma because Paige, or her too, Paige is this is it. If she doesn't, she goes away from UConn championship list, which is not something that happens at that program with great players. And Gino squanders the opportunity to get another one with a stacked team. So if anybody's facing more pressure, it's got to be UConn, Paige, and Gino. I guess part of this is to construct some sort of motivation. That the stop doubting us has been on shirts or whatever it is for South Carolina when they've been. I think they were the preseason #1 team. Everybody had them in the national. Everybody had some combination of UConn and South Carolina in the national championship. But in order for Dawn Staley's point to hit harder for me, I would like her to have cited an example of what should have been covered or how it's actually hurt South Carolina, because they're the most covered team not named UConn. I know that from experience. And of course, fans are going to, what happened with Caitlin Clark was a once in a lifetime thing. And Paige Bueckers is, another superstar who's about to enter the WNBA draft and who people are invested in and have been following her story and get to use the L word in legacy, whether it's the W or the L for her after this. So I don't know. Look, Dawn Staley's track record speaks for itself. What she's done with South Carolina speaks for itself. But I didn't really get those comments. I don't think her team is lacking in media coverage. And the other part of it is kind of just how the media works.